Welcome to Beyond the Wild podcast, where we go venturing beyond the gear, beyond the subject, beyond the shot, to find the heart of wildlife and adventure creative. Beyond the Wild podcast is brought to you by pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Listen in, we share tips and tactics learned from years of journeying into the wild. Your hosts are Jason Loftus, Ron Hayes, and myself, Mark Raycroft. Let's begin another episode of Beyond the Wild.
Welcome back, everybody. We're back together. Oh, Jason Loftus.
Yes, sir.
So this is going to be a couple weeks later, so this will be legal to talk about again. Jason had in his hands, in his hot little hands today,
R5 Mark II.
R5 Mark II. We've been waiting so long. And there are some things about this camera that can't wait to share, can't wait to test out in the field and report back on. However, Jason, what first thoughts?
First impressions?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's funny. We've been hearing a lot of folks complain that maybe there wasn't enough of improvement, right, or enough change to justify a new camera. I'll say that putting my hands on this camera, it feels, it's going to sound dumb, I know, but it feels more, feels like it's got more weight to it, I guess. Not that it's heavier, but it feels more substantial. They have redesigned the grip to be a little bit more ergonomical, and you can tell the difference. It's minor, but it feels better in your hand. They've moved some things around. They've made the video button where the old power on-off button was. That is now the photo to video button, back and forth. And the on-off switch is over on the right-hand side by the ISO wheel or the aperture wheel, depending on how you shoot. But so that as far as the look of the camera, it looks a lot like the R5, except for those changes. And the improvements are significant. Got to play with some pre-record stuff for both photo and video. Got to learn a little bit more about the improvements that were made. For example, when you're in electronic shutter mode, one of the things that drove me crazy about the R5 and why I always shot in mechanical shutter was because I hated getting 20 frames per second. And in electronic shutter mode, that was your only option. It was 20 or nothing. Didn't matter if you're shooting in low continuous, high or high plus, whatever. It didn't matter. You were getting 20 frames per second in electronic shutter. Now they've made it so that in electronic shutter, those are actually adjusted speeds. So you get, I think it's roughly 10 frames per second. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's 10, 20, and 30 based on the different speeds. So that's a nice improvement in my opinion, and something that really annoyed me with the R5 and why I usually shot with mechanical shutter. And the pre-record gives you two options. You can shoot at 20 frames per second, and you're basically getting a half a second worth of photos if you're holding the button down halfway. And so if you're at 20 frames per second, you're holding the button down halfway and something goes and then you press the button, you're going to get 10 frames additional that were pre-recorded before you push the shutter. And then it's the same thing if you're in 30 frames. You just get that half second. So in 30 frames, you'd get 15 frames. So that's the only adjustment you get there, really. But it works like a charm. We played with it a little bit. And it also works right off the bat with back button focus, too, just so you know. That was something that was asked when we were there with the Canon rep, and he clarified that it works with back button focus or your normal focus button.
So the big change that they made, that if this was the only change, I would still feel like it was probably worth the upgrade. The focus is faster. The right speed is faster, so you're not getting the rolling shutter issues using the electronic shutter. But pre-record with video, having the 3 to 5 second option is going to save so much memory that I think that would be. And the reason that it saves memory is because you can wait for something to happen, wait 2 seconds, flick whatever you had on your finger off your finger, and then hit record, and you still got what happened 2-3 seconds ago.
Right.
That is something that has been in the higher end cinema cameras. Well, even the middle of the road cinema cameras for a long time, but has never been in these hybrid cameras. And now all of a sudden, we've got a up to 5-second pre-record option. You know, your eagle on the nest, eagle takes off. You didn't see him take the pre-flight poop, so you missed it. Before, you just missed it, and
Right.
now you still got it. You
Well,
even got the pre-flight poop.
let's
Got it
start. I
all.
can give you a quick example, right? Shooting pygmy owls this spring, right? I really wanted to get him taken off the branch in slow-mo. So I kept just basically the game I was playing was record, hope and wait. It looks like he might, and then stop. And I just got a minute-long clip with nothing, and then record again. And I deleted, I don't know, probably 15 minutes worth of video that ate a ton of memory and battery off my card, right? So perfect scenario is you just sit there and wait. You don't even have to be pushing the button. You could just be hands-free as long as it's in that mode. I mean, it's eating battery, I'm sure, but it's going to be recording the 3 to 5 seconds, whichever you choose. And as soon as you see that do the pre-poop and fly, you just reach down and hit the button and you've caught it. So that is a big deal. It's a huge improvement for sure, and it'll save a lot of people a lot of heartache. You'll see a lot more people getting those moments that are so difficult. Because my luck is I do all that, record, and then I go, this is dumb. And then he does it. And I wasn't recording, right? So, but yeah, that's a big deal. Battery grip is different. We talked about that a little bit. It takes his same size battery. I think it's the ELN 16. I can't remember the number of the old batteries.
6N something.
EL6N or something like that.
Yeah.
This is I think it's an EP6N. So it's the same
correct.
battery. One's a P, one's an L, and the P is the one that has the different voltage. Is the way the guy explained it. The same everything else. It can shoot in the R5 if you want to. It won't give you any benefit, but it has higher voltage so that it can do some of the functions that are required to do in the R5. So you can actually use the R5 batteries in the Mark II. Sorry, you can actually use the Mark I batteries in the Mark II, but you won't get those functions like the pre-record and a couple other things. That it won't work unless you have those higher voltage batteries. So, we mentioned it last time, I think, but make sure you get the battery grip ordered and get that extra those upgraded batteries so you get the full function. If you're shooting,
unfortunately, buy the extra batteries.
Yeah, right. Yep. I'm just trying to think of other thoughts real quick. Yeah, so we already talked about the stack sensor, the backlit. That should help with the ISO. The stacking helps with the speed that it can record. The new processor, brand new sensor altogether. The focus system is unreal. I was playing with it with human eyes is the only thing I had to play with in the store, obviously, but boy, it was locking right on. Not even hesitating, not guessing anything. It was just locking on and tracking right with it. So hopefully it can do that with the animals. But again, this is a whole brand new system. The R5 Mark II now also has the eye focus follow, whatever you call it. There's a name for it, and I always screw it up. But it's where the focus point will follow your eye, which is what the R3 had, right? And it has that as well. So does the R1. So
you just have to calibrate it to your specific eye.
But yeah, those changes are significant. And I think they're significant enough. And, a lot of people are upset about the pixels. I don't see that as a big a deal. When you talk about what you can print and, there's a lot of factors that come into play when you look at what you're going to print and how big you're going to print. And I mean, you can print a 6 megapixel file as big as 24 by 36, and get away with it. And, you can even go bigger than that if you're at a further viewing distance, so there's, I don't think that's as big a deal. We're all used to the 45 megapixels and what that gives us as far as crop factor. So we didn't lose any of that, and we gained a whole bunch of improvements from what I can tell. So I'm excited to get my hands on it. I think it's definitely worth the upgrade, and I'm looking forward to playing with it more.
We've got 2 billboards that were 45 megapixels. They were shot with a 45 megapixel sensor. So I don't think there's any issue at all with 45.
Right.
It allows it to be faster, and I'm good.
And you get the 8K, right? So,
and you still get the 8K.
yep.
And you get 8K 60 frames per second, 8K raw.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a big deal.
You know, we did have a conversation real quick too. This is a side note. There's a lot of questions about the dynamic range. So I'm going to screw this up. So you guys got to correct me. I'm not the tech guy on this podcast, but the R5 Mark II gives you, is it C-Log?
Yeah.
2?
C-Log 2 and C-Log 3.
So what I understand is for it to be able to do C-Log 2, it essentially gives you 16 stops of range.
Yeah.
So they haven't come out and said that, but the guy that was taught, the Canon guy, was basically like, if it has that ability, it must have those stops.
Mhm.
So I mean,
you still have to expose properly to be able to utilize that
right,
16
the full
stops.
range.
But
yeah,
the human eye is 22 stops, and it was a big deal when, you know, the D850 that we always talk about being our favorite camera, it was a big deal when the D850 had 8 stops.
Right.
So to be to the point where we have a hybrid camera now that has 16 stops of dynamic range, whether it's, you know, clean or not, you have that option if you're exposed properly.
Right. So yeah, I mean, all those things being said, right? I mean, it's definitely an improvement, and I think it's significant. They did not have any R1s there to put our hands on and play with. They're all at the Olympics, so they were not letting any of those leave. But they had some R3s there to play with too. But yeah, threw that thing on the 70 to 200 and played with it a little bit there in the shop. Threw it on the 2 to 800 and was playing around with the focus system. And I was really impressed with how snappy it was and how accurate it was, and you know, locking on those eyes and that.
So when you say the shop, Jason,
yeah,
you're referring to
Picture Line. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah. So Colin was down there helping the guys at the Canon rep, and there was 2 folks from Canon that were there, kind of answering questions and showing off the Mark II, letting everybody, you know, get their hands on it. So it was actually really cool that Picture Line allowed folks to come in and have that, you know, opportunity. And there's a decent show up. I mean, I was there for about the first hour, and there was probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 folks that were kind of, you know, there all at once, and some folks in and out. But so yeah, pretty good turnout, and lots of folks excited about this camera. There's no question. So thanks,
Mark,
Picture Line, for letting us come down and, you know, play with it and get our hopes up that hopefully we're on the list to a point where we get one of those first ones. So
if we're not, somebody is off the Christmas list.
yeah, right.
Mark, does it tempt you at all?
I can appreciate the enthusiasm, and I'm stoked to hear how you both love it when you get it. I'm sure it will be everything you expect, from what I'm hearing. The R5, I had no complaints when I shot that for one fall season, and no, but it doesn't tempt me, and not due to any no question about Canon quality or image quality or build quality. It's simply the amount of gear and, you know, switching back and forth. I tried it, actually. I tried it for a season. I had one Z9 and the R5, and I had them on different lenses for wildlife, and honestly thought I could pop back and forth depending on which lens I needed for that scenario, and it wasn't fluid. I missed shots. So that's when I committed to Nikon for that, and it was the 800 millimeter lens, right? So I am very excited for Canon users. I get the enthusiasm, and yeah, it sounds fantastic. But everybody's kit is what it is, and the compatibility is important, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys just carry Canon now, right?
Yep.
For this similar reason.
Now, yeah,
it's an investment when you get the big glass.
And I couldn't have done it with both systems either, because everything's opposite, right? You twist the lens on the opposite direction, you focus the opposite direction. Everything's
it would make
it pretty hard to be going back and forth.
I found the menu systems to be just as easy to use. I found the button access for the various components on the cameras equally appealing, but it was that opposite rotation on a zoom telephoto that burned me all the time, because a lot of the scenarios, it's 1 second that behavior is happening, and if I zoomed and then my composition is not what I wanted to be if I'm zooming the opposite direction, and it happened frequently and disappointing. I loved the R5, and on the 1-500, that was a fantastic small kit with super high quality output. But yeah, it's opposite rotation, and it was the 800-6.3 hand holdable lens for wildlife that brought me back that way. So, but yeah, love Canon, and it's so exciting to hear what this is going to do for you guys, and I look forward to seeing it in the field and hearing more about once it lands in your laps. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people in line.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The good thing is I wasn't even tempted to spend more money and get the R1, because the R5 II, for me and the way that I like to shoot, using that hybrid capability, it that was the game changer. That was the camera, and it's, ever since the 5D2, when they first put video in it, that's been the way the 5 series has been, and I'm glad to see that they've continued.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting
So,
watching
Mark,
the YouTube commentators in the know with these with all new
yeah,
equipment, but with the Canons and what they're saying. And I mean, some of them have had the R1 in hand and shooting it, and it looks super impressive. There's no question about that. And I'm sure it is for many applications. It's probably mind blowing, but it's always, sparks curiosity to hear what people who handle all kinds of different camera equipment who've been in the profession for decades have to say about it too. And the R5 Mark II is seemingly getting glowing comments across the board. And the R1, I'm sure it will as well for specific applications. But from a distance, without really digesting it, when you look at the price difference of what the R5 Mark II is capable of, very cool.
Yeah, it wasn't even a question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mark, you've got some listener questions tonight, correct?
Yes. And something I was going to do just to take up a 2-minute segment, because on our recent episode that we recorded last night, it's totally fresh, which this one might be too. So this should stay in the audio or in the podcast is fine, but it may also be redundant as far as, the evolution of this exciting new Beyond the Wild podcast that we all are involved in and love very much continues. And we've talked about Patreon in the past, and that's something that we hope to have implemented very soon for subscriptions, for added content, and for your much appreciated support of our efforts. But and so the last episode, where part of it was talking about the amazing 3 weeks I had in Australia this summer. This will piggyback onto that. So if this is not on Patreon, then you may want to check that out as part of the subscription side. But for traveling on planes, this is just a little quick pro tip. You know how everybody loves the memory foam neck collar for sleeping on these longer flights. A 13-hour flight, you want to sleep for some of it, I would assume, especially when you leave North America. It's nighttime, it's midnight kind of thing leaving. It's late. Coming back is a different story, because it's usually depart Australia in the morning, and that flight you're awake a lot for crossing the Pacific. But flying there, so they're fine. Those neck cushions are fine. There's the inflatable ones you see in the airports. There's the memory foam ones, which are super comfortable, but I don't use any of them. I shouldn't have taken this out of the bag. I have a camping pillow, which is super cheap. I think they're $30. Fits in a tiny little pouch pocket, and you can blow it up just like a mini air mattress. It's even got a strap, and this is no brand thing. This is just a hack for traveling. It's got a strap that when I lean, I get a window seat, and I lean against it. It's not going to fall, right? It's kind of around my head, the strap. But what I really appreciate about this that's different than the neck cushion pillows is you can inflate it to the amount that you're comfortable with. And when you're up against the side of the plane and the seat, I find like inflating it to like 3/4 gives that flexibility that you're super comfortable because it wraps around the side of your head and you're not bouncing on it. So it's just a quick hack for traveling on longer flights for a cheap amount. It really helps with the comfort and the ability to sleep, and it packs away. There's no weight, and it fits into the little pack, little sleeve that will go into any pack and not be cumbersome. Whereas, the cushion neck pillows are big, right? They don't fold down. And this you can set to whatever fullness that you want for sleeping comfort. So quick tip there. Another spin-off. I'll jump in. Yes,
what's
sorry.
the brand on that one, Mark?
What's
the brand on that one?
This is Trekology. So I ordered this. It's on Amazon. They have a variety of things. So for my Algonquin trips, I also have a chair that collapses down into this little, it just folds up all these aluminum components for support. And then the backrest and seat go over it. And that was Trekology as well. And it holds a grown person, but there's, again, no weight to it and very little. So for interior trips or camping where you're everything's on your back, it's beneficial. So yeah, Trekology is what this brand is. And you know what? They come in different colors, all different options that way. You can get orange, blue. You can get the forest turquoisey green that blends in, black, whatever suits the mood. So also on the Australia content, I'll just pivot because I wanted to mention this quick biological part for the humpback whale portion of the story. And again, this is, if you haven't listened to that episode, here's some incentive because it was an amazing day on the water. My good friend Todd Yankauskas was wondering, I was talking to him on the phone after the trip and debriefing him on the exciting day. And I mentioned it was the mating season of these humpback whales. So they were quite active. And he's like, I had a great question. And I didn't know the answer at the time. I had to look it up honestly here. Is the humpback whale mating season the same in the southern hemisphere as it is in the northern hemisphere? So in North America, are the humpback whales breeding in July, August, like they are in the southern? I'm like, so I looked it up, and I just thought I'd throw this bit of information in there because it's curious how these things, evolve, and it's actually different. So humpback whales in the southern hemisphere mate from July through October, and in the northern hemisphere mate from December through March. So these experiences, right? We
I
get to
thought
know these species, and it causes questions to come up, and it's moving to spend time with them and learn more about them. Sorry, Jason.
I thought that they worse in my mind, but they traveled. I thought the ones that were in the northern hemisphere went down into the southern hemisphere to mate and breed and calve and everything, and then they went back up north to feed and stuff. But maybe they only go so far south, right? Because I know, like, I thought, like, you get the whales around Alaska, or sorry, not Alaska. You get the whales around the humpbacks that are there in the March time frame, and they're having their calves and stuff, and then they head back up towards Alaska up north to feed and stuff, and to feed their calves and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it's just that's the difference. They only go down so far, and the ones in the south only come up so far. I don't know.
That's kind of the speculation when we had a little off-camera conversation the other day, and just talking about it. Mark hadn't looked it up at that time, but just talking about it, you think, okay, well, they're moving toward the equator,
right?
Calves, so that maybe that would mean that their breeding seasons would coincide. But it makes sense. I mean, it's seasonal when you look at it, and into winter, early spring for the birth, and it's the same. You're into winter in, what'd you say, July?
Yeah, I mean that's so. Yeah, the point is in Australia, their winter is the opposite.
Right. Yeah. You're opposite on the southern hemisphere. So that makes sense. But my thought is that they were both moving in equatorial range.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it's the same and then they go back. But it does make sense because you're opposite seasons
Right.
completely as they migrate back further north and further south.
Right. So if the Alaska humpbacks migrate
That's cool.
to Mexico waters off of Mexico and Hawaii kind of thing, and then in the warmer waters have their calves and then move north. And it seems like in Australia, the humpbacks we encountered along the coast were swimming north, and they were just the first calf had been born that they'd seen the week before we were there. So again, as they're, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're swimming.
And those whales might end up in Antarctica. Those might be the ones that are, in the Antarctic
right
later on in the season.
So. Yeah. Before the podcast tonight, I was talking to my friends Mark and Sue on a Zoom call in Australia, and they were talking about that because of the recent trip, and they live far further south in the Melbourne area of Victoria, Australia, and they were talking about the trips that we could do there off the coast, and the humpbacks are coming from Antarctica area, from that direction, as well as southern right whales coming along that coast. So it makes sense that that's the direction they're moving further from the pole to calve, and then when that's done, they move back for those feeding opportunities, I guess. And so it looks like they both populations kind of move toward the equator to calf and then move back after. So it was a good question that Todd brought up that got me thinking on it, and because I wasn't sure. But I love that part of doing these trips anywhere in nature. It makes us learn more, encourages us to learn more about all of it.
Yeah, always ask questions.
Always learning. Never stops.
Mm-hmm.
Like a sponge.
Even at your age.
There's one of Ron's sweet zingers. I love them. Right on. Okay.
Never miss an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it should happen until the day we die. We keep learning. There's something, right? It doesn't come up frequently, but it's like I joke on occasion. It's like if I learn something, it's like, all right, on a specific day, I'm done for today. I learned something today. Accomplished. Box checked.
Right.
All right, on with the listener questions, and these have been submitted recently and this spring, and keep them coming, and we're happy to engage with questions at any time, and we keep a collection of them for future podcasts as well. So next one is from Michael Fairfax, and his Instagram. We'll mention Instagram for each listener that's submitted or sent in questions. And we encourage you to check out their Instagram because they're all great photographers that we're talking about, worth checking out and following their work. So Michael Fairfax at so FAIRFXMIKE was curious about what we do for backcountry trips for food prep. So I'll let you guys go with it first. Or you can throw it back at me.
You probably don't want to go to me on this one because I'm the guy that'll end up dehydrated because I forgot my filtration straw, or I take enough to live on. But when you're doing the backcountry trips, a lot of times you're expending more calories, and I'm probably not the best planner for that. I always count on finding a clump of strawberries or catching a fish or something like that. So a lot of times I'll pack rice, because you can boil rice and eat it no matter when, and then some dehydrated protein. As crazy as it sounds, I don't like peanut butter, but it's a good source of protein, so I'll take some bars. I don't take a jar of peanut butter or anything like that, but I live on a lot of bars a lot of times and dehydrated meals.
How
I'm pretty
dare
simple.
you? How dare you? How can you not like peanut butter? I did not know this about you. This is
We have a
It's
problem.
disgusting.
this
You
is a
sound-
deal breaker.
I had peanut butter and jam this afternoon.
Think about it this way, Jason. If you bring peanut butter, it's all yours.
Oh, hey, that's a good way to look at it. It's funny.
It's heavy, though. But
It is heavy. Yeah.
you want okay?
Yeah, I'll let
So-
Mark. You're the kind of the expert on the group on this, so I will just add a couple things if you don't mind, real quick, and then you
Please
can
do.
actually tell the listeners like the right answers. I'm much like Ron. When I do the backcountry stuff, I'm a freeze dried meal guy. I'll take a couple bars and bring my my jet boil and my filter for water, and I bring a few freeze dried meals, and I usually bring a breakfast or a dinner or two. Usually I'm looking to do the better meals. I'm not a big Mountain House guy. I try to there's a lot of options on the market now for freeze dried meals some of them are actually really, really tasty. Some of my favorites are a little more expensive, but if you're only going to buy 4 or 5 of them to go on a trip or something. The Peak Refuel ones are really tasty. They have some really good options. So that's kind of my go-to when I'm doing that kind of stuff. And I'll even do it when I'm car camping, right? If I'm just staying, around a park or something and car camping, use the jet boil to eat that way. So
That reminds me of Alaska, Mark. When we went to Denali, every time we stopped, I boiled oatmeal. I had.
Oh yes, yeah.
And literally, even
Still,
in
there's
Mike's
still some there.
garage, I think I've got enough oatmeal that he could survive a winter, I think.
he's got some for the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Love the enthusiasm.
That's funny.
Sometimes it's a much better purchase price if you buy bulk.
Yeah.
It's
How can you pass up? That's such a good deal.
yeah, right. The jet boil, they're awesome, and we Backcountry Trips we use jet boil all the time, and it's just you got the right measurement amount of water for the freeze dried meals, and you guys hit it perfectly. The freeze dried meals are lightweight. They're there's hardly any weight, and they have enough of the calories and salt and protein components to give you what you need for that part of the nutrition. Water filter, staying hydrated in the backcountry is priority. And I mean, I have the Life straws. I always throw 1 or 2 in because they're lightweight and compact in whatever pack that I'm taking on the trip, whether it's a food barrel or sorry guys, what do you call it when you have the dry bag, a big dry bag backpack? But the water filter ones, and I don't have the brand in front of me, but it's simply a bag. It's like a 2-liter bag, 2-liter bags connected with a hose and the filters in the middle. The name will probably come to me. You scoop the one bag, it's always the dirty bag, and then it goes through the filter, and you've got a full bag, then you pour it in, and I always take at least one, obviously, but usually 2 Nalgene containers with a carabiner that I clip to my pack. And so it's always there to drink, and we fill those before we take off from a campsite or when we're heading in with the filters. And they're gravity fed from one of those bags to the second. It's fairly efficient too. It doesn't take too long. Power bars and protein bars. There's so many different options. I mean, obviously look at the ingredients. So it's not primarily a sugar base, but lots of those are easy to pack and can keep well enough for a few days or more in the backcountry. Freeze-dried fruit is another option. You can get packs that seal up and reseal like a Ziploc bag with freeze-dried all kinds of different fruit that you can get that way that's good. And as far as the water, something that's kind of a bonus. I mean, drinking the water itself is fine. I mean, it's fresh and you're exercising. It's the best way to hydrate. But, while sitting around the campfire at the end of the day, you can get these little flavored juice boxes. And it's just to squeeze a couple squirts into the Nalgene, and all of a sudden you have 2 or 3. They're not very expensive, a few dollars each, and you can have whatever flavor of drink that you want with electrolytes. Some of them have as well. So that's another thing that we pack that's very lightweight. Sorry, Jason, did you?
Mark, I just want to add to that because I just want to add, you hit the nail on the head. I actually forgot to mention it, but some of the places you go, right, you might be literally drinking pond water. That might be your only water source. And there, let's be real, the filtration systems work great to get the stuff out of it that's going to hurt you, but it doesn't necessarily always affect the taste. So having something like that to flavor your water is a big deal. And it can, make it a lot more palatable to get that water down. So,
totally. And it just over days gives you different flavors. Some of the filter system I was talking about also it's got the filter, and follow the instructions when you get it back, because there's proper ways to dry it out so it's ready for your next adventure. But there's a second cartridge that can go on the tube as well. That's a carbon that will, if that'll help with the flavor, the taste of the water. Usually when we're on lakes, it's fantastic. But yeah, you have to work with what you can find. Streams are usually good. Mainly you want to make sure you filter out, things like Giardia, which causes beaver fever, which is why people don't usually just drink straight from a lake or a pond because of that risk. You do not want to get that in the field and become exceptionally dehydrated. That's risky. So water filter systems are really important. But the food stuff, there are a lot of options now that with freeze dried that makes lightweight and minimal scent, depending on what you're doing, what you want as well. So thanks, Michael, for that question. A quick one about the podcast from Kurt Hummel, and his Instagram is Kurt V Hummel. And if you're watching on YouTube, our producer Jason Griffiths puts everybody's. There's always photographs and videos too, but we'll put the names up on the YouTube so you can see that for their Instagram pages. KurtVhummel. He was wondering if we would rather listeners listen to the audio podcasts that we predict or the video podcasts on YouTube. Do we have a preference? If people, I'll just jump in. I think whatever platform works for you. We're grateful for your time. We are appreciative that you're enjoying the content and and our guests. But YouTube, there's added content, and if and actually, Jason Loftus mentioned this earlier too. If you can play the YouTube, even if you're not watching it, that helps with our minutes and helps with our traction on the YouTube algorithm, as does any thumbs up and 5-star ratings, comments, interactions. But yeah, if you can, even if you're not watching it, we hope you are, of course, there's no question there, but the minutes all help. So let it roll, guys.
I'm gonna defer to Moto from Madagascar too. Sounds so nice. Listen twice. Do both.
Yes.
Audio and video. Jason.
Where do you
Jason
get these?
G.
Up your
JG.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm so tired. It's coming in dream form right now. JG works really hard to get the visuals in the YouTube. And honestly, the stories are fun, and it's fun to listen to. It's fun to kind of relive as we talk about these trips and things like that. But the visuals take it to another level. And so I'd highly recommend, especially, I think back to one in particular, the polar bear trip to Churchill. That was such a visually stimulating trip, just whether it's the green at night in the aurora or whether it's the reds and yellows and oranges on the autumn tundra. That trip was just full of color. And so I would strongly encourage you guys to go back. You can fast forward through our discussions about how to carry your cameras on the plane. But that's of value too. But once you get to the actual trip content and the shoot content, there are some tremendous visuals that he works pretty hard to make sure he gets in. It's not just talking heads. It might start that way, but if you stick with us, we'll get to the actual meat of the topics and our guests as well. I don't. Mark made a comment earlier about the questions coming from listeners that are fantastic photographers. There's thousands and thousands of incredible photographers out there. What separates us is we just took the time to jump on a different platform and share with people. It doesn't mean that we're better photographers. So think about our guests and the content that they have and the content that they share with us. Well, Mark's a better photographer. Okay.
Nope, not saying that. Not saying
Got
that. I
upset
am
at that
moved
one.
every day by pictures on Instagram of multiple photographers.
Yeah, exactly. And so when
anywhere.
our guests share their content as well, we want to make sure that you guys are seeing that and that you get connected with the people that are kind enough to give us their time and be on here. So I would strongly suggest do both. That may be greedy, but that's my take.
I have great friends that do both, and it's much appreciated. And a great question, Kurt. Thank you for asking. And yeah, I mean, we love doing the podcast, and this different platform gives us an opportunity to learn more from other people, from their adventures, from their stories, from their camera equipment, from underwater photography to what have you. So it's we love doing the podcast.
Sorry, Mark, real quick. I wasn't going to say anything at all, but it just made me think.
Okay.
That there is maybe again, I will default to if you can do both, great, but whatever works best for you. We don't care, honestly. Pick one that works best for you. The fact you support us is awesome. And another thing that will help support us, right, is if you really like what you're hearing and seeing, share it with people, let other photographers know about it. That also helps us quite a bit. So I know that's not the reason everybody listens, is just to help us, but if you are liking it and want it to stick around, that's the kind of stuff that helps us be able to keep doing it. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thanks for adding that on. Very important. So Andrew Stevenson Photo on Instagram. Interesting one. Give some tips on lenses to carry for Alaska, especially the one Jason went on to photograph the fishing bears. Do you carry both lenses on a strap-on or cotton carrier-like device? Or you pack in a bag or unpack it for every encounter? Appreciate the fun, informative podcast. Thanks, Andrew. Are you going? Are you going to jump on
That's a great
my
question.
Communication there?
No, we're not. We're just going to let it go. I already went like this to Ron.
He shook his finger at me while you were looking at the question. Jason could see apparently the gerbils churning in my head.
You had a look. I was waiting.
I saw a little glint in his eye. Yeah.
Well, my eyes were kind of down, and all of a sudden, I just popped right up.
I mean, there are. I
sure.
tried a strap attempt with. I ordered it, and I'm sure Pictureline probably has these available. But it was like a shoulder harness kit that had the strap holding the camera on each side, right? And my friend Dave Towling was telling me it's the way to go, and I know it is for him, and I got it. I understand it, but didn't end up using it that way because I often get really low on the subject, right, for perspective, and I didn't want to have to cradle the other camera while I'm trying to shoot with the one when I'm dropping my position to get lower than the animal's eye, so it doesn't hit brush, a rock, or the dirt. So I'm kind of old school, and I just like to carry what I have. But I know you guys each have different techniques, so I'll defer to you to start with, Jason, as far as because of that trip too.
Real quick though, Mark. So is it fair to say that you're not a strap-on kind of guy?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah.
Mark,
Yeah.
Mark,
And
you asked for it.
I know, Andrew, I love the question and the interaction, and I know there was an added word in your question that wasn't there, but yeah. Do you carry both
I do
lenses on
too.
a
And I
strap?
greatly appreciate it because it,
But thank you for clarifying, Ron, because I am not, from all evidence that I'm aware of,
okay.
probably not the thing for me. Um, but the question, the sentence read, do you carry both lenses on a strap or cotton carrier like device for that Alaska bear fishing phenomenal trip?
Okay, I'm gonna try to be serious. It's actually a really good question, and I tried a couple different things when I was up there. Specifically for Alaska and the bears, I would say there's some differences on other types of trips that I've done that I would prefer. But specifically for the bears in Alaska, I did carry two lenses. I did carry my backpack with me each day too, because I had some miscellaneous stuff in it, and an additional lens and some things. But as far as my camera and my shooting gear, I was using a monopod with my 400, and that was my go-to lens for sure. And then when the bears got close or whatever, it was a little bit more scenic. I had my 70 to 200 on my cotton carrier, which I wore over my waders because the waders would kind of get in the way of it, right? So that was the only option to use. That was the over the waders. So I did, and I used that very successfully. I tried a strap, actually, a really right stuff strap, and it worked, but I found myself when I'm getting up and down a lot, I'm having to really worry about that camera dragging or hitting something. So I really liked it on that chest rig that Cotton Carrier makes. It's a great system for specific scenarios, and that's a perfect scenario for it. And I love it because I can literally just lay my 400 down with the monopod and just grab that camera and do what I need to do, and then hook it back on and switch back to my 400, no problem. So that's how I ended up shooting the majority of the time when I was doing the bears. And I mentioned the lenses already, the 70 to 200. One thing I'm intrigued about when I go back next year, I think I'm going to rent the 100 to 300. I think that could be an incredible lens for bears. I really think it could be like the lens for bears, to be honest. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes, but a little bit different. It doesn't, I won't be able to fit all my gear in one pack. There's some different variations there. The 70 to 200 is such a cute little thing for Canon, right? That it fits no problem in that Pelican case or the f-stop bag or whatever. So, but yeah, that's how I ended up shooting. I will just say before I hand over the mic to Ron or Mark that when I'm doing elk or other stuff, a lot of times I do find myself with a strap. And I find myself, because I'm up more, I'm not getting down on a rock bed or in the water, so I'm not as worried about that camera that's hanging. And I find myself being able to hold my 400 against my chest or something and swing that camera up on the strap and shoot and let it drop back down, and just not without having to lay my 400 down or something. So there's a couple different ways I like to shoot, and it really just depends on the situation and what's going on. But that's how I did Alaska.
And I would agree, and then add, the one danger with using a strap is in shooting around water like that is in fact the water, because you're in a remote camp for that kind of shoot, and if you dip your camera in the water, you're just done.
Yep.
So you've got to be careful. So if you do use some kind of camera strap, make sure you tighten that thing up. The fittings slide, so you can tighten it up a little bit so it's not hanging as low, and keep it a little closer to your chest, and then you utilize the fittings to slide it up when you're ready to shoot. I pretty much run with the same system that Jason uses, unless I'm doing video, which is the monopod, because number one, it's easy to carry. I throw the lens, the long glass, over my shoulder. The monopod is my handle. And then when I put it on the ground, if I'm not in the water, you put it on the gravel or whatever, utilizing the other lens, then the monopod leans against my body, so it's pretty quick access to that. I don't have to bend over. I can just grab the monopod and bring the long glass up, and I'm ready to shoot.
Yep.
If you're doing video, obviously you're on a tripod, so it's a different conversation. And then the one advantage, Mark was talking about getting those low angles. The one advantage to the LCDs on the back of the camera now is that most of them have an articulating LCD, so you can get those low angle shots without having to get down in a belly crawl position, get really low to the water if you're shooting bears like Jason was, or if you just want to get a good reflection shot on the water somewhere, or get something in your foreground. You can utilize that LCD and then just you're looking down, so it does keep you off the ground a little bit. But I'm also the same as Mark. It's all about trying to separate yourself, and a lot of times you do that with your angles. So your setup just has to work with everything. So if you have a monopod on, that doesn't necessarily work with getting down on the ground either, because you got that protruding weight sticking up, and so it just throws your balance off with your camera. So you just kind of have to decide what kind of shooting you're going to do and figure out your system from there. There's lots of good systems. Cotton Carrier, Peak Design's got those clips. So if you want a long lens and a wide angle, clip the wide angle onto a shoulder strap on your backpack or your wader strap, or whatever. There's a lot of flexibility in shooting, but that's the way I run with both if I'm just doing stills. Mark, how about you? You always have two cameras.
Yeah, but just quickly, Jason, aren't you an ambassador for Cotton Carrier too?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
You've been using it for years.
Did you want me to? Yeah, no, I have. I actually have been using it for years, and I will just say, that was wasn't a shameless plug. I'm being sincere. I wouldn't be an ambassador for a product that I don't use and I don't, like, and get benefit out of. I will be. I mean, I'm completely honest all the time with this kind of stuff, but I don't use it all the time. But it absolutely has a time and place, and it comes in very handy in those situations. For example, I brought it to Svalbard, right? Thought that might be a good time and place for it, but ended up not being so great because of the suits you have to wear and some of those situations and the life, the life preservers you have to wear when you're on the boat and stuff. So wasn't as handy as there as I thought it was going to be. But other scenarios, I use it. I use it every year, 2 or 3 times a year. There's no question, just depending on the situation. But
cool.
So yeah, and I think my code's still good. So untamed 15. If you guys are interested in the Cotton Carrier and you want a discount, I think that's a 15% discount code if you guys want to. Or you can contact Pictureline and get with Colin. And I think I don't know for sure if they actually sell Cotton Carrier or not, but if they don't, you can go direct and use the code. So
they probably have
one
the
other
strap.
thing real quick too, as I was thinking about that, Mark, is when you're walking on the bears, another thing, and Ron mentioned the water, and he's 100% right. Another thing to consider is when you have that on your chest rig, I always tried to make sure it was covered with something, because you're always going to have splashing. You're splashing when you're kicking waters, you're walking, and other people are splashing when they're walking by you when you're walking in the creeks and stuff. And the danger there too is if you fall. I mean, and don't kid yourself that you can't fall. One thing I would definitely take with you for walking in the streams is a walking pole. They're super lightweight, easy to carry. They collapse. And when you're in those creek beds, those rocks are super mossy and slippery, and it's super easy to fall. So I would definitely consider taking that and being careful. Maybe even if you're in a creek for a long time, you might want to consider taking that off and put it in your bag or putting it in a dry bag or something, so that if you do fall, you'll get wet, but you can still photograph, so.
Yeah, I think back to that conversation we had with Dawn Wilson, and I think it was right after she got her Z9, and she was photographing some fishermen for newspaper for a story, and took a fall and dunked her brand new camera.
Yeah. Unfortunately for her, she was in a place where she could get out and get a replacement and whatever.
Yeah.
But if, like Ron said, if you're back on a camping trip with the bears, you're hosed. That camera's done for the rest of the trip, So
Good advice.
Mark,
It's a great question.
I know you
And
got some differences. Like Ron said, you have two cameras with you all the time.
yeah, the two cameras in my pack all the time, or one in my hand, one in the pack. But I'm a bit old school that way. I've tried the different ways to carry cameras, and I still have gone back to. I always like one in my hand. Whatever I think the go-to lens is for what's happening, I have that, and I carry it in my hand. I've got ways I tuck it under my arm when I'm walking, just what I'm used to, and so it's at hand, ready to go. But there are times like I need to switch out. Something's happened. I need more telephoto or less. So I want to switch to the other camera in my backpack. And because of the not having both out, I do sacrifice those few seconds. And, often it doesn't matter, but the odd time I might lose an opportunity by switching if I do. But so I do it that way. I carry both in the camera pack and have had different brands of packs over the years. But I have the one out that I think is going to be the best for the opportunity. But I switch all the time between lenses. The lenses are always on the housing. I don't switch them off the camera very often, only probably a few times a year. I like to keep them on there for dust concerns, even though there's a curtain that when I turn off the Z9 every time, it protects the sensor from dust. It still can get in there. I just keep them on their lenses unless I need to switch. So, thanks for the question, Andrew. And our humor was directed at each other, not you. It was a great question. Thanks for sending that in.
That is absolutely correct.
Well, let's do one more because we're hovering up to an hour. And this is I think a good one to finish on. It's from James Evans at James Evans Photography on Instagram. And he's curious to know what everyone's bucket list destination is.
Mark, you go first this time.
Okay. All right. I mean, I find new places with trips that reveal different habitats and wildlife that I fall in love with every year. It's an amazing planet, as I say all the time, but I can't help but feel that way. And the places that I go routinely always have magic in store. Every trip is even repeating to the same spot at the same time of year. It's different almost every time. What comes out photographically, experiences, memories. I love it. I love wildlife photography. I love the unpredictability of wildlife photography. The effort equals reward. Common sense is important. Knowing your gear is important, but wildlife photography is full of surprises every day. We wake up, we don't know, right? Nobody does what you're going to encounter that day. And it's often magical. So if I was forced to pick my favorite destination to go to, it would be in the backcountry of Denali National Park. And it's just such a magical landscape and the diversity of wildlife, the separation from society and people, and not, there's no aversion to them. It's just so grounding to be with just one or two people or a few people on a magical experience in that landscape. It's surreal. It's my favorite, but that's not to say there won't be something else that I discover that I like more. And many places are near and dear to my heart. But again, if forced to pick one, it's the center of Alaska. Handing it off, Ron.
So was the question bucket list or favorite place?
Oh, you know what?
Bucket list.
So I shouldn't have answered it that way.
Does
So
it
I mean, you
change?
can.
Does it
Could
change anything?
Yeah, right.
yeah, it does.
Because I know your heart, and it does.
Yeah, sure. Because bucket list would be
Your
something.
heart's with the moose always, but
I love moose.
I know.
Yeah, the whole idea behind bucket list is the fantasy of something incredible that we haven't experienced yet that could be surreal. So I would go back to my favorite destination over and over and over and over again, but I would like to go and I mean, caribou are a big part of my world, and I would love to camp and intercept and be there on the North Slope up in Alaska or the Yukon. There's some pretty magical landscapes in the Yukon that the porcupine caribou herd migrate through as well. And to be there in autumn as the herd is moving through with just the massive numbers, and to see that, I mean, it's a migration that is amazing and mind-blowing, and been such a history on this planet. And to witness, film that, and photograph that would be my bucket list today. That'd be my choice.
That's awesome.
I grew up with nothing but Mutual of Omaha, Jacques Cousteau, National Geographic. If I could be the first person on the planet to photograph every wildlife species there is, that would be my bucket list. But I don't know that I honestly could narrow it down to one spot. I really want to go to Africa, but I also really want to go to Antarctica or the Falkland Islands, with the breeding colonies of penguins, and to see that. Having been a student of biology, I would like to go to the Galapagos someday, just because so much of what I learned was based on Darwin's studies there, and just to kind of walk in some of those same steps. Man, that is a hard question. I would love to see a wild snow leopard. Even to see one, whether I photographed it or not.
Mm-hmm.
To see a wild snow leopard, and to, see him hunting the blue sheep in the Himalayas. I don't think it, as a wildlife lover, I don't think it gets any more wild than that, or not much. Yeah, I think that would probably be it. And then if I could add witnessing Marco Polo sheep on top of that, that would be. I could die happy now,
Yeah,
but
no, I
keep
want.
going,
I've got
man.
other ideas.
yeah, there's so
I know.
much. It's just, it's insane. The opportunities. I want to see all the animals that were on the covers of the magazines that I grew up looking at. The snow monkeys. That's an easy one, relatively. The Himalayas, I think, would just be, the adventure would be half of it. Seeing an animal that is that elusive would be another solid portion of it. And then if you got to see them interacting with prey species, I think, yeah, I could be pretty happy with that.
Some incredible ideas.
Well, for me,
you got me thinking now.
I will try to narrow it down to 2 spots. But I will just say that I've been very fortunate. I've actually been able to.
Sorry, the screen actually froze for a second there.
You're good, Mark.
You're okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. I'll start that over, JG, because there's been a little bit of a delay. No, Mark, don't worry about it. There's been a little bit of a delay and a lag. So, for me, I'll try to narrow it down to a couple spots. And I just want to say, first of all, I've been very, very fortunate that I've been able to actually check off a few bucket list items over the last couple years, thanks to this crew here and some of the friends we've made on the show. And the opportunities that have come have just been incredible. So, first of all, thanks to you guys for, letting me be a part of this and being able to have those opportunities, because I doubt I would have been able to check those boxes otherwise. But there's still a couple more that I want to check off. One of them is jaguars on the Pantanal. I'm actually got a trip booked to do that next year, so I'm, again, very fortunate. And then I do want to do pumas in Chile. That's another one that'll be, they're on the, let's put it this way, they're on the short list. I could keep adding, like Ron and Mark, both have said. I've yet to go do caribou, with, like up where Mark does them in Newfoundland, and do, muskox. Those are on the list too. But at some point I will go do those and have those experiences. But if, God willing anyways. But if it's anything like Africa, we'll see, right? So, but yeah, those are the two that I'd put it down to right now, is the jaguars and the pumas. So
I'm going to the Pentanol in October.
I know, you dirty dog. I can't wait to hear how it goes. That'll be cool.
That's why I didn't put it on the list, because it's already going to happen.
Yeah. But you guys are both right. There's so much to see on this planet. There's so many animals so many trips to experience. And I mean, none of us would be able to do them all in our lifetime, even if we had the means and the money. There's so many things to photograph and see that if you had the means and money, you could not do it all, which is saying something. So it'll be fun trying.
I would love to try.
Right, exactly.
It's fun to think about.
That was a great question.
Yeah, the more you pause on it, and especially when you hear what other people say and other thoughts, it really sparks ideas. So it's a good question, and creates focus and reflection to planning. So thanks, James. And anything else to throw in, gentlemen? It's
from my end.
It's been a
Those
pleasure.
Those are really good questions.
No, really good questions tonight.
Yeah, fun stuff. Keep them coming anytime, and we'll keep them. We'll collect them and address them. Those that are selected in future episodes. Make sure to check us out on our website. We don't often mention that, at beyondthewildpodcast.com. There's all kinds of links there. There's additional show notes and images from each episode, and it's also just a great resource for information about what we have going on as well. And as you know, on all audio platforms and on YouTube, guys, appreciate our sponsors, pictureline.com and Canon USA. If you are thinking about new camera gear, please get in touch with Colin at pictureline.com and look into the pricing there. They have great service. Gentlemen, thanks again. Thanks for listening, everybody. We look forward to seeing you with the next episode soon. Take care. That's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wild Podcast, and make sure to check out our website at beyondthewildpodcast.com for additional show notes, information, and photographs for all of our episodes. You can watch our podcast on YouTube, where we'll include video and photo content, and subscribe. We welcome your comments, questions, and feedback on all of our social media platforms. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Wild Podcast. Until next time, embrace adventure in the great outdoors with a camera in hand.